Perfect. Wonderful. I think the session, the recordings has started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to the session. And I'm very excited that we are going to have this session, this past paper session today. On the program, I think we have 3 papers. But like we have 2 presenters show up today. I haven't heard from the 3rd presenter. So hopefully, Dr. Chen is joining us, but we don't know for sure. So let's get started. And we have Dr. Dincer from Turkey, and his local time now is 10 p.m. Dr. Dincer is an assistant professor of sociology at Abdullah University. And he will be presenting his research on college students at Turkey's new pool of informational workforce, coffee shop sector in Bursa. And we also have Dr. Roy from Adams University, who is joining us from Yunnan. So good morning. Her research that she is going to share with us today is titled as Proliferate Speaks. Women workers' voices in an IT sector. I very much look forward to both presentations. As my earlier emails communicated, we're going to run the session like this. So we're going to have our first presentation, Dr. Dincer's presentation, and that we're going to be about 10 to 12 minutes. And then we welcome questions from all participants. And then we have our next presentation, like we head over to Dr. Roy, to share her research, her paper findings with us. And then we have another about 5 minutes Q&A sessions. And if we have Dr. Chen joining us, then we have a 3rd paper. Otherwise, we're going to have some additional time for questions and thoughts and sharings, and we're going to conclude the session. So right now, I'm going to hand this to the stage to Dr. Dincer, and for you to share your presentation. Let's see if I
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm sharing, and is it working?
Yes.
Okay. So, oops. Thank you very much. I'll try to stick to that 12 minutes mark as best as I can. This is a little bit too much of a specific title and content, I'm aware. That's why I will start with a little bit of a background information, trying to not to take too much time of yours. But I'm basically looking at college students in the workforce. I'm looking at them as part of the retail sector and service sector. I'm looking at specifically coffee shops, and I'm looking at specifically a city in Turkey. By the way, recently Turkey changed its name from Turkey to Turkey as recent as last week. So in this presentation, I will refer to my country as Turkey, so do not get too distracted. But yeah, so basically my agenda is fourfold. I will give you this little background, what happened in Turkey since 2000, just with 2 characteristics. I'm not going to go into in detail. I'm going to talk about the higher education boom. I will convince you that there is a boom. Don't worry about it. I will talk about coffee retail industry, and then I will talk about my discussion, my fieldwork findings from focusing on the experiences of the workforce on the ground. So, oops. This is Turkey's GDP. For those of you who are familiar with the global south, developing world, or third world, whatever you like to call, up until 1980s, this is actually a pretty flat line of growth. Pretty much all growth happens in Turkey after 2000 at sizable pace. And then there's like a little dip in 2010. If you look at it in detail, you kind of see some sort of a peak point in 2013, and since then things are a little bit deteriorating, and this is important for the context of our conversation. We are now in a series of other economic crises. Maybe you're familiar from international news, but this is ending at the time of my research conducted in late 2019 and 2020. But as you all know, GDP only tells a fraction of its story. We look at Gini coefficient and income inequality. And when we look at the growth in Turkey after 2000, unlike countries like Taiwan, South Korea, or some other countries, ours was not really supported by export-oriented value-added sectors. In fact, there is a strong emphasis on construction industry, hence the built environment-oriented growth. This also came with a lot of income polarization. And as you can see here in 2007, we kind of do a great job in reducing income inequality. But then again, since 2007, the situation gets worse very fast right away. In that sense, we are looking at a country that represents the bottom end of the OECD countries, with countries like Mexico, Chile, and ironically, the United States. But I also want to talk about the tertiary education, the higher education boom at the beginning. So this is the second contextualizing element of my talk. As you can see here in this chart, the number of universities since 2000 goes up exponentially. It's almost a fourfold increase. We now have 217 universities as of 2022, and all this came with the last 2 decades, and this was actually reflected in the university enrollment as well. There was only about less than 1 million people in 1995, a little over 1 million in 2000, but now 8.2 million people are registered. That roughly corresponds to 10% of Turkish population. To give you some perspective, that ratio in the United States is 5.6%. So basically, Turkey diverged from the rest of the world in many ways, but it actually did in terms of its investment on university enrollment as well. This is important for us for 2 reasons, because on the one hand, this university expansion caused some sort of a built environment expansion. Obviously, those universities had to be built, but also it caused a lot of young kids at very particular age, and it kind of encouraged them to enter the workforce in a ways that I will explain in a little bit. But this growth also happened, this is the third background contextualizing information, happened in parallel, in conjunction with a very structural youth unemployment rate. As you can see, it is quite fluctuating in the past 20 years, but since 2012, the rate is actually up exponentially. And this is the official rate, 24.64. Unofficially, some of the labor confederations argue that this unemployment rate is almost as high as 45%. This also came in, this growth in the last 2 decades also happened with increasing representation of minimum wage earners. According to public sources, more than 40% of Turkish workforce earns minimum wage or less. Next country in the OECD is France with 8%. So this is a very income-wise, very polarized country, very much minimum wage dependent. And in a little bit, you will see how our minimum wage is already very low comparatively anyway. But this whole thing that I've tried to focus on has happened with this thing in the background, with these dynamics in the background. So what happened in the last 20 years? There was a sudden, large-scale, but largely unplanned growth. Campus infrastructures usually fell short across the nation, and a lot of housing and amenities for students needed on campus and off campus. And obviously, on campus growth did not really meet the demand. And then what I call Alaturka college towns popped up nearby these college towns. So the one I'm focusing in Bursa, which is the 4th largest city in Turkey, is known for its college town called Görükle. So you can see the spelling here. And it actually turned in the last 20 years from a village with less than 1,000 people into a mid-sized city, officially 34, unofficially 80,000 people. And the metropolitan municipality anticipates that it's going to be home to more than 200,000 by 2030. So it's a huge growth, right? So, oops, what's going on? So the final contextualizing information is the coffee retail. So why am I focusing on coffee? Because interestingly, coffee really picked up in Turkey. When I was a student in the year 2000, we actually didn't really think about having coffee. It was all about tea. But starting in 2003, with all that economic growth, with all that infrastructure and built environment growth, coffee shops popped up everywhere. One of the good examples is Starbucks. Number of Starbucks shops in Turkey is now 536, even though they started in 2003. We are number 6 in the world, number 2 in Europe, and Starbucks only represents one company. Alongside Starbucks, we have a range of companies that is organizing and operating in this field. So it became some sort of a non-existent entity. It turned into a ubiquitous entity from non-existent in the past 20 years. So that also happened in conjunction with all this. So with all this in the background, I wanted to focus on how these college students are actually doing in the coffee shop industry, which is prevalent in their surroundings. So we did this 4 months research. This was right before the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously not planned. We didn't know that the pandemic was coming up. We interviewed 23 different college students. We observed them on their shop workplaces. And we've basically asked a simple question: does the employer matter? We looked at international chains, local chains, and individual owners. And we wanted to see if the reasons for work, the work experience, and the impact on their student life varied depending on the employer. Well, we looked at the reasons for work, and except for one student, pretty much every student wanted to work for financial need and subsistence. There's only one person who was interested in experience and improving her social network, but out of 23, this was a very negligible case. And then we looked at how actually shifts and wages are actually operating, but we see a very twisted definition of full-time and part-time. International chains actually stick to the law in their definition of full-time, but when we looked at those local chains or individual owners, they actually had this part-time conception, sometimes entailed as many as 60 hours a week kind of work schedules. So you work 60 hours, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you consider part-time. They only consider you full-time if you work 6 days a week with 12 hours a day for $1 on average. But then again, the benefit of being considered as a full-time doesn't really come with any recognition whatsoever. So in the international chains, on the other hand, they stick to that 45 hours a week work week definitions set by the government, but the situation was not really significantly better there either in terms of total wages, because they didn't really add up to $400 a month in the base case scenario. But we also looked at other things outside of wages. We looked at weekly planning. How did actually job allocation and planning actually went? In international chains, you actually knew your schedule a week ahead, but in the other shops, there was like a lot of daily planning. There was a lot of arbitrary assignments and cuts, and oftentimes you knew the hours you're going to work the next day, pretty much at the end of your shift that day. And there was also a lot of seasonal oscillations, summer-related restrictions, etc. Then we looked at the relationship between employers and the employees. In international chains, it was very hierarchical structured. Job was clearly defined, even though it entailed pretty much everything from cleaning toilets to serving coffee. It was clearly defined. It was very formal, legal, and there was strict control over hours. I'm going fast because my time is running out, but when we looked at domestic chains and independent stores, we see a lot of interpersonal relationships. They acted like it's a family establishment. There is some form of patrimonialism as a labor control mechanism. But in moments of this disagreement, that patrimonial relationship quickly switched into authoritarianism, and there was also very strict control over hours. So we asked them the impact on schooling, because at the end of the day, these kids are college kids, but we observed that there was complete disjunction from school, because as you remember, some kids are working as many as 60 to 72 hours per week. Attendance was basically off the charts, long hours, and this is a very tiring job anyway. As you all know, the service industry is very difficult. And we saw these students getting into intense negotiations with their employers during midterms and final times. So basically, college was becoming a secondary element, if an element at all. But one of the things I'm trying to argue here is that the existence of college actually helped shape this industry, because tuition-free, colleges are tuition-free in Turkey. There is no cost of going to college. You don't pay nothing, but you also get some perks, subsidized housing in dormitories for a lot cheaper than the rest of the market. You also get stipend support. And in order not to lose these privileges, students actually asked for informal forms of employment in these individual and domestic chains. So in a way, college subsidies pushed students for informality. In the meantime, their degrees or their supposedly careers that they are pursuing becoming irrelevant to their skills, irrelevant to their career searchers. So that's one of the reasons why and how this form of college education created this industry. I'm not going to go into this detail, but we also asked these students if actually coffee, the experience of coffee, the aura of coffee did make any difference. Only one of those students actually talked about coffee passionately. I'm not going to be able to read this for time constraints, but other than that, it was nothing but just a job. And that job was particularly available. It was easy to come in and get out. But at the end of the day, it was a job. There was not really anything related to its content or anything to the school. So in conclusion, there's a tertiary education boom in Turkey. It really boosted built environment expansion. That includes campuses and the built environment around the campuses. And that increase of built environment obviously increased the demand for the service industry. And one of the key components of the service industry is actually food industry, and coffee retail is one of the key ones. And they benefited immensely from this labor supply nearby universities. The university I studied had almost 65,000 students coming from all kinds of backgrounds, but primarily middle and lower middle class backgrounds. So at the end of the day, those college subsidies, which were intended to boost education in different forms, in an unintended way, caused deepening informality and made sub-minimum wage a little more common than maybe it would have been otherwise. And finally, we looked at the ways in which businesses operated these conditions, and we observed a huge variety between international chains, branding themselves differently from individually owned operators, but more than 90% of the workforce is actually working for those individually operated shops, because the international chains, even though prevalent there, they are not really the key employers in the industry. And finally, we see this as a very adverse impact on education, their careers, because the kind of jobs they are pursuing on a daily basis, the amount of energy they actually spend is pretty much disconnected from what exactly they study or what kind of skills they exactly want to improve. Okay, that was the fastest I could do. Thank you very much. This is my email and this is my Twitter handle, and I really appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dincer. This is very, very interesting. This is the first time that I have learned about the education, the university expansion in Turkey, at a rate that is exceeding probably most of other countries. Like within a 20-year span, from a low number, like less than 100, now is like a 217 university in end of 2019. So that's the big jump. It certainly has huge impacts on the young individuals' lives, what they do. Do they choose to work, or do they choose to attend university, especially given universities are free, right? So it's tuition free. But I also appreciate that you did the interviews is more kind of qualitative research that helps to find more in-depth experience that the students have had. And one of it I saw is very interesting is about the different experience or different treatment students have received when they worked for different types of coffee shops. international chain or the local chain or independent stores is different. I have a question. If I can ask this question first, and then I can hand you Dr. Roy, and if we have some other scholars here, and we can have more questions. My question is about the pay difference or the benefits difference. Like you shared about the definition of part-time in different type of stores. Like in the international chain coffee shops, it's kind of it's by the labor law or employment laws in Turkey, 45 hours a week, which already pretty high compared to like countries like US or Canada. 45 hours a week, that's more than, it's 9 hours a day, right? So it's more than 8 hours a day already. But and then for the local chain coffee shops, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. Wow, that's really a lot, right? So, but I guess my question is like two things. One is, to be counted as full-time, does that come with some benefits? Like say, for example, in the US, I know, Dr. Dincer, you might be very familiar with the employment laws in the US. Like if employees work at full-time, then the employers are legally required to pay for Social Security and employment insurance, workers' compensation benefits, all these premiums, right? Contributing to those programs. Is that the case in Turkey as well, or it really doesn't matter? Like there's no benefits at all for employees, even when they are counted as full-time employees?
Yeah, this is a great question. That's the most important point that I need to highlight anyway, because these kids are actually actively asking for not being formal, because there's a cost of being formal. You could lose if you're staying in a dormitory, which is subsidized, if you actually sign up, if you become insured, and there's this Social Security equivalent in Turkey, which is basically 90% of the insurance scheme runs through that public institution. You basically lose your rights that comes with being a student. Oh. And that's number one is the privileges at the dormitory. Number two is those stipends that you may be getting from the government, because for the first 4 years, if you qualify, if you're coming from a middle class, if you're actually below certain income threshold, you usually get stipend support. Some of them are in credit forms with very low interest rates. Don't compare that to what you have in the US. It's very far from it. But in either way, these students are actually aware of the possibility of losing those privileges. So they actually want to stay informal. So because of that, it doesn't really make any sense for them to be called full-time or part-time. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, definition of part-time there was just a random detail. It was not really making any difference, because it didn't really specify any days. A lot of those kids are actually going to work at 4, leaving at 12, maybe 1 a.m. So even when they work 8-9 hours, they actually work very awkwardly, because these are, if you look at it, they're supposed to be getting overpaid, because these are not really normal hours of operation, right? But none of that really existed in this industry. And a lot of those kids are very young, so they kind of rely heavily on themselves physically, and they take the burden for a variety of reasons. But eventually, they didn't really care. They didn't really demand being named as a part-time or full-time. So for them, it made no difference. For international chains, they actually paid very much attention. So everything was extremely formal. It was more like a full-time job in any way, actually, because even when they wanted to negotiate breaks to attend exams, because of the infrastructure insufficiencies, a lot of the universities are not mandating attendance, because they know that if every student came in, they wouldn't really have the capacity to just serve them anyway. So a lot of schools are actually, they forego attendance policy. So these students know that, but you still have to take the exam, right? So even then, for international chains, that becomes a problem. For individually owned, independent mom and pop shops, it's a little different story, but at the end of the day, it didn't really make any difference. So it was an active pursuit of being informal. That's why I think that's an unintended consequence of this college expansion, because it is feeding this industry in a way no one really thought about, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dincer, for addressing this question. And it's a very important issue to address. Especially given like things are changing so fast, then, you know, when the government comes up with some policies like really well-intended policies to sponsor college students for pursuing their education, but then at the same time, because, you know, how much money they earn and what kind of job they have may have impact on the eligibility of university attendance, then that would have some unintended impacts or consequences on the youth, the young people's employment and their jobs. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Okay. Can I be heard? Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm asking one question, that don't you have the system of getting a particular percentage of attendance in the college or in the university for the purpose of sitting in the exam? Do you have any rules like that?
Well, as I said, a lot of schools, the growth in the last, the intended growth, I should say, did not really translate to, basically infrastructure growth didn't really catch up. So when I was working at that university, I actually worked in this university, there were some attendance policies, but it was as loose as it could be. So technically, nationwide, if you fail to attend more than 30% of the classes, you fail. But a lot of schools kind of let that go, because they know that if every student walked in, they wouldn't have enough space to accommodate. So it's kind of a policy that nobody really acknowledges. But then again, it's kind of a known unknown, if you will.
Yeah, really. Yeah. But in India, we have this system, no? At least 80% percentage you should have. Of course, the system of education is much cheaper as compared to the other countries. My son was also studying in UK, so he had to work for the purpose of earning or managing himself. So that was a practice there also. But the cost of education is comparatively lower in India. And that's why maybe because of this, they don't go for work. And attendance is also very strict here.
Yeah, well, here it is free, tuition free, basically, plus all these subsidies. But, well, as I said, 10 million people are registered in higher education institutions. So that's a big ratio. I mean, that includes distant learning as well, but still, even with that, it's a high ratio. So a lot of these students are coming from very poor backgrounds. A lot of them don't really have the family support. So the work is, for the 50% of our interlocutors, work was not really an option. So it was just, you know, they had to do it. And then especially if they are studying fields like maybe social sciences or maybe administrative sciences, they are more likely to just give up on attendance and try to focus on grabbing more work. So this doesn't really happen in engineering or medical school as much, but yeah, it is still prevalent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dincer. So it looks like many students may not have the option of not working because they need to support themselves, even though they don't pay tuitions, but there are still other expenses that they need to find revenue sources to support themselves for. And the other thing that I found your research is very interesting about is the adverse impact on their education, or like to make it more broader, their overall well-being. I recently had my students here in Minnesota did some kind of field work, but more with their friends, like people, like students who also work at the college level, the undergraduate college level. And a big thing to them is really because most of them do work, like they work part-time. And the most important thing for them is like the stress level, like when they have to handle work and study and exam and assignments and scheduling, like they are under constant stress. And most of them work for financial reasons. And, it's kind of a similar situation, but to the extent where like when the students don't have control over their scheduling, that actually increase the stress that they have. Like they want to do a good job at school. They want to do a good job in pursuing good opportunities at work. But, handling everything simultaneously, it's just has just added a lot of stress to their work-life balance, like or study-life balance.
Absolutely. And also one more thing before, I don't want to take too much time of Professor Royce, but a lot of people consider these coffee retail jobs as like easy and in the spectrum, but dealing with people on a daily basis and also multitasking all the time, anything from cleaning to serving coffee, it is very high on body. A lot of these kids are doing this because they are very young. Maybe they can bear it, but even watching them doing that was not really that comfortable at times. So I should also, and now we are in the middle of the Starbucks organizing in the US. So I'm gonna throw my support out there. So
that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, the Starbucks workers, especially students workers, need more support and we need more research on our student workers. Yes. So thank you, Dr. Dincer. I'm going to hand the stage to Dr. Roy, and we're going to learn from Dr. Roy's research on women workers' voice in the IT sector.
Actually, I wanted someone should help me in displaying this one, my PowerPoint presentation. Of course, I'm trying. I don't know whether it can be seen by you or not.
So if you click on share screen, then you can select a screen that you want to share with us, and then we will be able to see that.
No, actually, I'm not skilled in that field, I have not done this. Normally, what I do is I send my screen, my PPT to the center from where I'm going to present the paper. I don't know whether if I share screen, then what I have to do.
So you have your copy in your laptop, right? In your computer, you have that copy. Yes. So open that file. Then you can see the PPT file, right? So then you can, here we are seeing your sharing your screen. And now if you can open the slides, then we can see your slides on this screen. Now we can actually see your screen. So you have done the exactly right job, like sharing your screen. We can see your screen.
Yes.
The only thing you need to do is to open that file, the PPT file.
Can you see?
Not really. Can you see, or can you see the PPT that you have just opened? If you have an extended monitor, drag that to the same screen that you're using for Zoom.
Can you see it now?
No, not really. Yeah.
Okay.
We see your, I think this is Chrome. We see your Chrome.
Yeah, we see a Chrome in a platform. It says join meeting. So maybe you shared that Chrome app, but not the whole screen. So try to share the whole screen. Otherwise, if you want, you can, I sent an email to all of us this morning. So if
Yes.
you can send the email, you can send the PPT to me.
I have emailed this, and then I have been promised that that would be displayed. So that's why I was not at all concerned about how to do that, or otherwise I would have seen this. I would have tried this in my from my own. No, I've sent this. I have sent the email to I think Tian someone.
Yeah, we don't have the PPT here, but you can quickly send that to me. I can open on my laptop and share with our group here.
Can you give me your email?
I sent an email to you, but I can quickly type here and you can. I put on the chat box.
Yes. I cannot see. I cannot see.
Do you see my email in the chat box?
Yes, I got it. Got it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Professor Shu, how long have you been in Minnesota? Maybe in the
12 years. 12 years. I graduated from University of Toronto back in 2010 and then joined University of Minnesota Duluth that year. And then now it's on the 12 years mark. Yeah.
So
I see you graduated from Cornell back in 2016.
That's right. That's right. I was started 2009, finished 2016. Yeah. So we are kind of Great Lakes, Finger Lakes.
Yes, yes.
That connection right there. I love that. I mean,
Did you receive
let me check again. Not yet.
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah. Perfect. Let me double check.
I think the mail has been sent.
Yeah. So let me see if I receive it. Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Is it amazing that we can, receive and send files instantly? I can download and open and share screen. Dr. Roy, if you can stop the screen sharing, I can share your documents from my end. Here we go. This one. Do you see the slides? Okay, perfect.
I can see it.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you to change it, no?
Yes. So you can, I can control the button here. So just give me a gesture that you want me to move to the next page, and I will do that.
Okay. So my topic, should I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anytime.
My topic is Proliferate speaks women workers' voices in IT sectors in India. Actually, I have used the term proliferate here for the purpose of indicating the women employee who has been suffering, specifically in the IT sector, who has been suffering a lot of, what can I say, dejection from the co-partner, co-sharer of the or co-employee, as well as the employer, for being as one of the, they're considered as the weakest part of the population who has been absorbed in the IT sector in India for the purpose of working. Now, normally before 1991, 91 was the mark date from where we have started adopting the open door policy. Before that, we had been following the closed door policy. So our business was not, we have not opted to globalization, but due to some economic reasons or the other, in the year 1991, we were compelled to adopt globalization. As a result of which, it has been observed that a lot of people were employed in the different IT sectors because of the entrance of MNC within the country. And as a result of which, the employment opportunities for the women became enormous. But on the other hand, they have had to lose many things because they don't have the question of human right. They lose the question of having an association or union of their own. They don't have any union at this moment, and also at the same time, they don't have the right to ask for equal treatment within the company itself or within the MNC itself. So this was the main reason for which I wanted to call this women community in the IT sector as the proletariat, because we all know that in the words of Karl Marx, whoever is not a capitalist is a proletariat. All services are proletariat prefer to. Of course, among the proletariat themselves also, there are differences in their attitude. Most of them want to call them as the white collar employee, or blue collar employee, or yellow collar employee. That means they wanted to identify themselves as a separate entity, different from calling them as a proletariat, because most of them, they don't like to call them a proletariat. So women employee in the IT sector fall into the last category of employment which was offered to the people. We can say that it is a yellow collar job, but literally we can call it as a yellow collar job, because they don't have the capability of establishing their position in the IT sector, and were compelled to perform the activities which were entrusted to them by the employer, and as a result of which the relation between the employer as well as the employee, or we can say the top level employee with the lower level employees, are almost like a capitalist and the proletariat. As a result, in India, IT sector position of women in the employment field follows the same line, as a result of which the research aims to record the voices of the women of the IT sector under the gendered society. I must mention here that India itself is a gendered society, because in most of the cases, the women were treated as the second-grade citizens of the country in all aspects of their life. Of course, so second one is how the employee affect the work culture. Second one, normally a motivated and satisfied employee would promote a healthy culture at the workplace, as we believe. But normally in the employment field, specifically in the IT sector, we find two types of employees were there. One is the aggressive employee, mostly the male employees, and they promote a healthy competition within the workplace. Among the male employees, there is a healthy competition. Non-aggressive employee who are involved in reverse culture, most of them are the women, and so they can be considered as the non-aggressive employee. Though the change of culture affect their attitude, of course, sometimes since they come out of the office, come out of the house for the purpose of employment, their attitudes somehow have changed. But the story of women in the IT sector in India follows the culture which they have carried forward from their houses to the society. So they are always a little bit docile, and they don't know how to fight for assert their rights in the factories, or in the companies, as a result of which policies are framed in such a way that they cannot challenge their position in the society, as a result of which they cannot satisfy they fail to satisfy their needs. Of course, they are considered as the backbone of the organization, as the employers are mainly responsible for keep the industries in mobility. Okay, next one. Globalization has brought into being a phenomenal increase in the women's education in India. As you were seeing, I'd say you can show you can get a bird's eye view of the whole situation if you display the table here. So here it has been told that under globalization, the with the implementation of globalization, education of men are falling back as compared to women. Because whenever at the age of 15, there is a chart which has been given here, consisting of the information which is broadcasted in the census report of 2011. So it told that in case of if the men of the age group of 15 come to the take education is 23%, it is 27% in case of women. In case of graduate male, it is 65%, and for women, it is 116%. Graduate non-technical men, 48%, women, 91%. Men in the engineering, 156%, women, 326%. Men in the medical field is 74%, women, 157%. Veterinary, men 56%, women 154%. As a result of which, this is the publication which was, as I have mentioned, it is published in 2020. Information we have gathered from 2020, and it shows that the women are going much forward than the men in the field of education. So next one, please. But gender gaps in the research in the IT sector contained, because among the labor force of throughout India, men are 72% employed, where the women are 47% employed. As a result of which, there is a gap of 25% population, which indicates that in some of the cases it is 50%, where the women are educated but they're not employed because they cannot assert their position in the society. Next is that women employ, yes, and as a result of which the reason behind this is that rights and the expectation of the women in the IT sector has never been considered important for the purpose of defined goal. Now the research question, as I have raised here, is that do the IT sector fulfill women employees' expectation? Number one. Number two, do the women employees' opinion varies about the employers? Do they really get justice by being the employee? in the IT sector? Do they face gender discrimination in the employment sector, or are they allowed to analyze or evaluate their job as per the women's employment perspective? So these are the questions which need to be which needs to be taken care of while handling the position of women in the IT sector. Now, we see that the 55% of the women are seen in the IT sector. Of the educated women, 55% are in the IT sector. 20 overall scenario is that 20% in the corporate sector, 20% in the private sector, 10% are working in the BPOs, and 5% in other ancillary sector. As we say that they're purely involved in temporary job, or say they stay in the, they come to the office for a particular period of time, and after that they are being asked to sit down for a few months, and then again whenever they are required they are called upon. And 5% complaints of leaving the job due to the lack of proper service provided to them or service conditions there. Now, other inconveniences faced by the women are that, as I have told you, that it is a gendered society. So there is no lack, there is the lack of a daycare center for the care of their children, which they want to leave back if they come for the employment. In West Bengal, specifically in Calcutta city, as we know that there is a center which is known as the IT sector. All the offices of the IT sector are concentrated there, but unfortunately, there is only one daycare center that is accommodating 100 children at a time. So most of the parents, or most of the mothers with whom I have talked with, they are not in favor of keeping their children to this daycare center. So normally, they don't have a place to keep their children while they come to the office. And they don't have any specific work time also. In most of the cases, they go to office at 9 o'clock, but when they would be back, it is not known to them. Most of the cases, if works comes, they work for 9.5 hours in the office. So problem is that they cannot, since there is no specific timing for them, they cannot keep the help also in the house for the purpose of taking care of their children. Now, as a result of which they don't, and also at the same time in the appointment letter, they don't have any specific service condition prescribed. No provision is provided to them for the extension of service or extension of facilities for them. No minimum hour of service and maximum working hours is provided to them. Many leave the job due to the absence of determined hour of work. Hence, the pressure arises from the family. That means there was a demand from the family that they should go back home early. And this compelled, sometimes they are compelled to work late at night if the assignment arrives in the late hours. So they don't have, their voices are not at all heard in the IT sector. Next. There is no set norms in handling the employees in the IT sector, because as I have told you that there is no definite work norm, lack of recognition of women workers as the independent earning member, absence of human rights policies for women in the employment sector. Women are the victim of pay gap, career stagnation, and other inequalities. Women constituted 21% of the total workforce in 2011. It increased to, but the employment is going on increasing, and the involvement of women in the employment sector is also increasing. So this type of gaps did not hamper the employment, did not stop the women to enter into the IT sector for the employment purposes, because it is a third world country and economic condition of the families compel their women to go for employment. As a result of which, it was 21% in 2011, it increased to 30% in 2012, 34% in 17 and 18, and this is higher than the the public and the private sector, but still their voices are not heard. Though the word women's participation is in the IT sector is second highest among the non-agricultural sector, because the computer enjoy the women-friendly images and fit into the overall gendered socio-cultural constructs, because since the work is associated with the computer, in most of the cases, the families allow them to come to the office for the purpose of earning. It offers highest social approval, and as a result of which demand for stipulated job norms are never considered important, because families support the profession as safe and secured. So this is the reason why there is an increasing number of women employees entering to the IT sector day by day. Now, women workers' voices. If we look to the position of the women in the IT sectors, you will see that firstly, in the first side, they get high salary. They have got easy international mobility, and gender policies are knowledge centric and skill possession. So if you are educated, then only there is a possibility of you getting into the job. Hence the gender concept is ignored. We offer new ideas. Says a woman employee, we offer new ideas, we work hard to implement our ideas in practice, but the benefit are enjoyed by our boss, who is indeed a man. In 2012, only 22% companies have more than 20% women, but very few of them are working at the senior level. In 2015, number of women employed, though, increased to 33%, but only 2% are found in the C-suite of the employment field. Thus, Indian IT industries are definitely ahead in respect of diversity and goes much beyond the lip service and the tokenism, but the discrimination is significant, says a woman employee. And most of us are middle-level employee, while men of the same age go further in the development ladder. It is discouraging to us. These are the expression of the women's voices, as we have heard while talking with these ladies in the IT sector. Now, next one is women's discrimination at the IT sector at the entry level. In the IT sector indicate an attrition. Women's representation is only 40%, because 40% women engineers are rest 40% engineers are unemployed, and 20% are underemployed. So only 40% are properly employed, 20% are underemployed, and 40% of the women remain unemployed. Engineers remain unemployed. There is a gender pay gap in all levels, lowest for 3 to 5 years experience, highest for 6 to 10 years experience. So gender gap, pay gap is more if the service condition is higher. Now there is vertical and horizontal segregation. While 51% employee at the entry level recruits are women, over 25% women are managerial level, are in the managerial level, but below 1% are at the top level. So there is no women or almost no women at the top level employment. Also, there is stagnation at the entry and the middle career level, and gender gap widens over a year significantly. A recent report indicates that about 88.5% companies had less than 10% of the 10% of the C-suite are female. 80% companies have less than 20% at the senior management level. That is more than 50% companies have stagnated at the same level. Women in the senior management level is only 4%, says 2017 information. Now next. What is the position of women in the perspective of male employees. Normally, though both men and women enter the career at the same level, the men remains younger at the senior level as compared to women. This indicates women with career breaks and part-time career take longer time to move up, says a C-suite male employee. So they give their own expression while talking about the women. Majority of women working at the industry are aged 30 years or below and are usually single. Hence, a large number of women tend to exit from the industry after 5 years of employment. The path is almost interrupted by marriage, family wishes, shift from one place to the other with husband, birth of children, or family pressure. That these are the factors which mainly compel them to leave the job at a particular within 5 years of their service.
Sorry for interrupting, Dr. Roy, because the session officially ends at 2:45. I have time to stay. I don't know if Dr. Dincer, you have time to stay. Wonderful. So let's continue, Dr. Roy.
Okay.
Next slide. Yeah.
I have a few little things to say.
Yeah, no worry. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, it's very interesting research.
Post-COVID era, there is an increase in the demand for computational automation and digital skill catalyzed by COVID-19. The industry feedback has shown that the emerging needs of the day is changing towards the digital environment. As a result of which, we have seen that there is an increase in the appointment of women at the women in different level. The diversity has been recognized as a good business position as well. NASCOM, an industry for the technical persons, points out that corporation with at least 10% women in company, at least 10% women are working in the company, while the 2.5% to 5% higher returns in the equity firms, where women are at least 30%, women, I cannot see the 15% higher profitability than the other. So when women do not do the very same thing, the response is quite different. There is a different standard of women for women and men, says a team leader, especially if women are assertive, she can establish their position in a better position, but the case is different in case of men. So normally a lady who is an employee of the IT sector was of opinion that it's a razor line thin that nearly impossible to work. Not being assertive won't be promoted. So they're of opinion that always we are in danger, and if we don't assert ourselves, we are not promoted. If we assert ourselves, there is a possibility of us losing our job. Next. So I don't think it is essential, as I have told you earlier also. Next one, please. I'm giving the example of certain very, very important organizations that has been in the IT sector. Infosys lists that 14 individuals in their executive management team includes 1 woman only. So average is 1:14% at the top level management. In the one of the 5 senior women is a vice president. Infosys also has an executive council made up of 13 members, including 1 Indian woman only. So most of the cases, only 1 or 2 ladies have been adopted for the purpose of maintaining the strategy that we are including women in our every aspects of life. Aspects of our business. Number of women in the board, 1:15. Number of women holding executive management position, 1:14. In Wipro, number of women in the board, 0/12. The management position, 1:14. In HCL Tech Limited, 1:9 and 0:9 respectively. That means in the management position, there is no one women. In case of Mahindra Sattam, 1:6 and 0:6 respectively. Tech Mahindra, 0:11 and 1:7. So women research, the information is given by the Research Initiative, Women in India IT Industries, Center for Internet Society in 2013. So normally this is the position. The position itself is very poor in India, and until and unless the demand is made by the women for the development of an union or an association to enable them to heard their voices by the superior authority, the position of the women will not improve in the IT sector in India. It is in a very poor state, though the country itself encourages the education of women, but no attempt is being made from the country nor from the MNCs to give them a good position in the country. So this is the situation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. This is a lot of information. I really appreciate this great research, because myself, I do gender pay gap study. I do sexism at workplace. This is a lot of great research findings for me to learn, and I really appreciate you share the gender gap, the gender society's impact on women's treatment at workplace. This is super interesting. And I look forward to perhaps learning from you more through emails and conversations in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you, Dr. Dincer. Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask? Okay.
Yes.
We still have time, right? I mean, this is very nice. Thank you very much. I have one little, not comment, but maybe a similarity with Turkey, and I have a follow-up question. You said it's about 50-50 at the entry level, the gender ratio, but as we go up, the number skews towards men significantly. That is pretty much what exactly we have in academia in Turkey. There is 50% of students, it's basically evenly distributed across gender. When they start their academic careers in Turkey, it's still about 50%, but we don't really have many women at the dean and the president level as we go up. So it's very interesting to see something like that at the high, highly educated sectors. My question is, one of the ways in which women in Turkey deal with such problems is basically to go abroad because they're just too educated. America is a top destination, obviously, especially in the last 2 years. Germany has become a top destination. I'm wondering is there any such interest among Indian women who are specializing in IT sector, who are overeducated vis-a-vis the rest of the labor market, to go abroad to not address, but bypass this problem of gender representation?
Yes, they very often they go out. They don't have the restriction in the family, specifically in the educated families. But the problem is that those who are staying back, they are deprived like anything, because there is no policy. And formally, as you know, that India is famous for having their union. Mainly the leftist union was very famous during this particular time. Say, for example, from 70s onwards, mostly it is a leftist government, leftist policies union, which has been guiding the men and women in the society. But normally with the upcoming of the MNC, that union is totally lapsed. There is nothing like union. No one has got the right to say the stage their voices to the society. And as a result, which since there is no assertion from the from the authority, from the government itself, because it is a developing country. In most of the cases, government is also dependent upon the MNC. As I have told you, that open door policy has been adopted. So they don't want to displease this group, displease this MNC group who has been contributing. Even we have our own MNCs also, but
Yes.
we have been, they are contributing so much towards the political needs of those group of people, if having vested interest, their vested interest associated with this. They don't want to assert this thing. It is a known fact. Everybody know that the women are promoted up to a particular level. After that, they're not glass ceiling, as we say, is very, very important in their cases. But still, there is none to fight for them. And also at the same time, initially, the main basic problem is that once you are entering into a service, a lady, if she enters into the service, she is getting very high pay. And so she is so satisfied with whatever she is getting. She never bothers about the hard promotion, hard benefits in the society. And so since there is no demand on the part of the concerned person, how can one fight for the other? But the situation itself is very dim, as I say. But nobody is there to unite together and to make their voices heard to the people. So this is the position.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you, Dr. Dincer. And so I really appreciate both of you sharing your research study. And it's about the end of the session. And if we have more questions, and I'm sure that we have, because these are super interesting papers, we can always send emails. I actually sent an email to all of us this morning. So feel free to reply that group email, and we can continue our conversation there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, Dr. Dincer, and good morning again, Dr. Roy. Have a good day.
It is 1:30.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I had been to Turkey also.
Oh, nice.